Perfect. Lovely to be here with you this morning. I was thinking about what could be helpful for us at this stage. And before we dive into the specific practices of the four measurables that were introduced on Thursday, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, I wanted to continue just a little further with rousing bodhicitta itself, because this is the source from all of those things actually stem from. So there is I was thinking about how best to phrase this, sort of three ways of rousing bodhicitta that are very common from a traditional perspective. And I'd like to introduce it in the traditional perspective, and then I'll talk about sort of the practical application, and we'll do the practice today. So the first of the three ways of rousing bodhicitta that we might want to engage in before doing a main practice, such as mindfulness of the breath or mindfulness of emotions, or even moving into one of the four measurables like loving kindness practice. The first way would be to rouse bodhicitta by contemplating the great kindness that has been shown to us by an individual. And I think in a traditional context, if we were monastics and we were traveling and we were reliant upon the alms of others in order to survive, to have some sense of shelter or food, it would be, oh, these beings, these sort of, even contemplating the beings that offered me my meals last night would actually rouse the sense of like, oh, I really feel that sense of open-heartedness to them. The second form of rousing bodhicitta would be that it's easy to rouse bodhicitta when we think of the beings, the teachers who have shown us great wisdom and support through offering the Dharma and teachings to us. So we might think of those spiritual friends and teachers who have guided us in practice, those who, for example, first introduced us to meditation or who continue to support us on our journey. And then when we bring their image to mind, we say, oh, wow, I feel the sense of open-heartedness. And the third would be to contemplate the great suffering of all beings. The idea that there is so much pain and suffering that everyone goes through in the world, that's just part of life. And that by turning our mind to that, we don't get overwhelmed, but we become very open in response to it. Naturally, some of these qualities like love and kindness and compassion begin to flow. I mention this in the traditional context because there are ways that we might, I don't want to say tweak this, but to make it more accessible for ourselves. So the first aspect of bringing to mind someone who has indeed been so incredibly kind and uh, generous with us. It's probably not the person that just gave us our meal last night. It's probably someone in our life who has generally been of great support, such as a dear close friend that we can always call when we're feeling down, or a romantic partner, or another family member who, is always looked out for us. So I think that is one way to consider this great sense of kindness. And again, the point isn't to say, oh, I need to have this type of person in mind. The point is to rouse bodhicitta. So we'll bring to mind someone who has shown us this incredible amount of kindness so that even bringing their image into our head, boom, we feel a sense of openness. Instead of the second form where it's a great teacher necessarily, it can be a great teacher. It can be some spiritual friend who has shown us how to work with our mind. Another form of looking at that is anyone who has shown us great wisdom and taught us things that we find to be valuable in life. It may not be a Buddhist teacher, it may be another form of spiritual teacher. It may be a grandparent who really taught us basic things that we still remember every time we reach for ... we think of our grandmother and how kind they were in showing us how to do certain things. It could be a school teacher who taught us the most basic things that we still use every single day of our life. Anyone that has shown us great kindness and support through offering their wisdom and their knowledge. could be a great access point for bodhicitta. With both of these things, I think it's really helpful to just say, well, whoever came to mind as Lodro was babbling at you, that's a good person to work with. Whoever popped, oh, you know what might be an example of that? And then you start to question it, of course, because that's what we do. Is that a good example? I don't know. Maybe I can come up with a better one. Often the first thought is a good thought, and I would recommend going with it. And then the final form of rousing bodhicitta to contemplate the great suffering of all beings, if that does sound overwhelming to you, it might be that we would bring to mind a particular group of people that are suffering in a war-torn area, or people that are suffering in your own backyard, maybe not literally, but in your own neighborhood. It doesn't just have to be people, it could be other forms of beings. It could be animals, it could be anyone. But some version of, oh, when I bring them to mind, again, my heart feels open. Compassion starts to peek its head out. And we're not even trying to get to compassion. We're just trying to get to that sense of openness. So I've gone on long enough. I'm going to guide us through this practice. And ideally, whatever comes to mind helps you become more open. And that we would take this openness into the rest of our day. So let's start by getting into our meditation posture. And then when you're in the posture that works well for you, just taking some time here to connect to the natural sensation of the breath, just letting the breath flow, however it's flowing today. Noticing when we get too distracted and just gently coming back to the breath. Really, just for now, staying with the breath to the best of your ability. At this point, I'm going to encourage you to bring to mind someone in your life who has shown you great wisdom, knowledge, helped you along your path. And that could be a spiritual path, or it could be another path, the path that led to your career, the path that helped you in school. Someone who shared what they had to offer and helped uplift you. So we bring their image to mind almost like they're in the room with us. And we don't have to do anything here. We're just bringing our attention to our memory or image of them. And as you do, notice if your heart starts to soften in response. Similar to before, when our mind starts to wander, we just gently bring it back to this image. Letting our heart grow wide, accommodating, in response to the memory of the great generosity of this being. If there is some sort of aspiration that you would like to make for their well-being, may you only know peace, or may you feel happiness, something else entirely, in your own words, feel free to make that aspiration at this time. We let this image go, If you'd like, you could take a deep breath, letting it go with the exhale. And then we bring to mind someone who has shown us a lot of support in other ways, someone who we might even say we love, someone who has gotten our back many times before. Often for me, it's this close friend that I've known for most of my life. It just comes to mind automatically. Maybe it's someone else for you. As I mentioned before, whoever comes to mind first is a good person to work with. We don't have to judge the best person who's shown us the most support, just someone that has. That bringing them to mind does bring about a sense of relaxation of the heart. So again, it's this sense of a vivid image of them. I can think of the color of their hair or the way that they dress or smile, imagining they are here with us right now. This person who has always been so generous of spirit with us, always given us the time of day, so to speak. Similar to before, when we notice that we have gotten completely distracted from this image, this memory of this person, we just gently return our attention to it, starting fresh, and seeing if the heart begins to soften. If there is an aspiration that we'd like to make for this being, feel free to do so at this time in your own words. Even if it's something like, may you have a nice week, or may you know lots of joy. We don't have to be overtly profound with our statements, just something that feels genuine to us. And then we can take another breath and let this image dissolve. And then the final one is a bit of a challenge just in that it's probably multiple people or an idea of a thing as opposed to something as vivid as someone we've known for a long time. So we bring to mind a group of people or beings that have been in the midst of suffering, that are currently suffering in some way. Could be a family that you know who's going through hard times. It could be, again, people overseas that you've read about in the news. It could be something else entirely, but whoever comes to mind first, we work with them. We hold them in our minds to the best of our ability. If our heart feels very tender in response, that's okay. That's bodhicitta. But we just hold them in mind for now. There's nothing wrong with that tenderness. And we let our heart remain open to the best of our ability, trying not to shut down in response to the suffering. And as we did before, if there is an aspiration that you would like to make for their well being, please feel free to do so in your own words. May you feel safe. May you feel joy, whatever it feels right. And then we can let this particular image or idea go with the out breath. And just take a beat here to notice if the heart does feel open, awake, tender, raw, vulnerable, whatever adjectives you might describe. Just let it be for a moment. Just rest in that state. When you're ready, you can open your eyes or raise your gaze, bringing some movement back into the body. Thank you for practicing with me. I'm going to turn off the recording just so that we can have a few minutes here of question and answer and have it